Hello and welcome to this release overview. It is late November 2020. We just shipped version 1.62, and in this and the previous couple of versions, there's been a few things that I would like to go over with you now. We've got some changes to user administration for users in organizations that are using SecureX Signon to manage those accounts. We've got some additions in threat response that we're going to go over, some additional features and capabilities there. We're going to cover a couple new things in the incident manager, and then finally I'm going to leave you with some additional resources that have recently been made available for SecureX Orchestration. So without further delay, let's get into it and look at those SecureX sign-on user administration updates. So in SecureX, we've got some new user management features for users of organizations whose accounts are managed by SecureX Sign-On. So if your organization's accounts are managed by Cisco security accounts, by AMP for Endpoints or ThreatGrid, then this does not apply. But for our users of SecureX Sign-On, the administrators have some new options that are available for user management. You can select to invite users here. Under confirmed users, you can add additional users there and an invitation email will be sent. For those that you've sent the emails to and have maybe not yet responded for whatever reason, you can select them in this dialog here under invited users and you can choose to resend those invites. Some simple user management features now available, but now let's go look at threat response and see what's new over there. On the initial landing page for threat response, you may notice this auto emit on toggle over here. You can turn that off, you can turn it back on. We're going to leave it on because that's the first thing we're going to talk about. And we're going to put a couple of domains in there and we're going to do a very simple investigation. You see the investigation interface loading, and you may notice that it's only counting one enrichment. And that auto emit is on. This is what auto emit does. We pasted in two items to investigate, but one of them was omitted because it's known to have a clean disposition. That's probably not something that we need to be terribly concerned about. If I want to, I can add it back into the investigation. But that brings up our next point. We have some changes to the summary bar. We've got our targets listed on the left as always, and then we've got investigated observables, omitted observables, the three other observables that were returned as part of the enrichment process, the indicators, and as before, the modules occupy the right side of the summary bar. Off of each of these, we have our list of observables, and on each observable, we have a pivot menu. So we've got pivot menus now up in the summary bar. In the pivot menu, this brings us to our next thing, we've got the option to create a judgment. From right here, I can link indicators to the judgment, I can assign a disposition to the judgment, and so on. I can describe why I gave it this judgment. This is useful for a number of reasons. One, just to collect internal threat intelligence, but also if I link it to the appropriate indicator, to an indicator that I have put as part of a feed, I can then add this observable right here to a feed that could then be consumed by additional security devices in my environment or in my cloud. Now this change, the ability to add judgments, is in the pivot menu, which means that it's everywhere a pivot menu might appear. I've opened the ribbon, here's the pivot menu off of something that's in a casebook in the ribbon, and I see here create judgment as an option. This will go everywhere that I've got pivot menus, including the browser plugin, including the pivot menus that may appear in any other product user interface. And the last item I want to show in threat response is the layout of the investigation UI itself. We've now got the graph in the upper left portion where it's always been. We've got the investigation details panel occupying the entirety of the right side, and we've got the timeline below that relations graph. Now this is all if we are in automatic layout. If I go up and switch this to the stacked layout, then I've got the relations graph first, and then the timeline, and then the investigation details panel. While we're talking about the layouts of the investigation interface, I want to cover one more thing back up here at the top. We've got a new investigation button, which will simply open a new tab in the browser to a blank investigation on that first page that we started this at a few minutes ago. The snapshots button that does the same things that it used to do. But we've also got this add to investigation field. If you click in there, You get some additional options. You can type arbitrary text into the window and have it processed the same way any other text would be, but you also get this control panel, this pop-up, that shows you the observables that were found in your investigated text so far. I can see which ones were actually investigated. I can see here that Cisco.com is not checked because it was clean, it was auto-emitted, but I can check it. And if I click investigate now, I'll get a new investigation where both of these items will be processed. You might notice each of them also has their own pivot menu. Their dispositions are shown via color and via icon. I've got the options to unselect all items or alternatively select all the items. I can copy all of these selected items into my clipboard, and I can go in and manually edit the investigation text as well. That concludes our tour of the threat response interface. Now let's go have a look at incidents. In the incident manager, we've got a couple of new things. One, for each incident, I've also got a tab for observables that shows me all of the observables in the incident as originally reported, as well as any that might be in any linked references I might have attached, such as snapshots or casebooks. I've also got the ability to edit these properties here. I can add assignees. I can assign myself to the incident if I want to volunteer for work. I can edit the key properties here. I can give it a category. I can give it a discovery method. I will leave it as the default of network IPS right now. I can select an intended effect. What did the attacker have in mind when this attack was carried out? I can assign it a confidence rating. And I can assign it a traffic light protocol rating. If you don't know what traffic light protocol means, it's just a way to rate how widely this information can be shared. Google has more information about that. But that is the changes made to the incident manager in recent versions of SecureX. Now we're going to cover some new resources made available about SecureX orchestration, starting with the GitHub repository for SecureX orchestration workflows and atomics. You can use that shortcut URL or the QR code to get to the part of the Cisco Security GitHub where you can download and import or hook up directly to GitHub to get these items. Next up is the documentation area, also in GitHub. You can use, again, that shortcut or that QR code to get to these write-ups answering many of your questions about SecureX orchestration. And then we've got additional general resources as well. Please do note the new SecureX microsite at developer.cisco.com. And of course, check out our public pages about SecureX at the cisco.com/go/SecureX URL and the SecureX videos playlist, of which this is part, at YouTube at the next shortcut. And lastly, but not leastly at all, the SecureX FAQ available via the shortcut shown. Thank you very much for your interest. Stay tuned for further videos as we continue to improve SecureX and add new features in the near future. Take care.